Hello, welcome to another edition of The Daily. I'm Samantha Yarrick here with Jason Seguini, and we're going to jump right into last night's MLS action. First game, Eastern Conference clash between the Columbus Crew and Houston Dynamo. Jason, it was the interim head coach Brian Bliss's coaching debut, and he didn't disappoint.
No, Columbus Crew get a 2-0 victory over the Houston Dynamo. This is kind of a big game because as Columbus tries to stay alive for the playoffs, the Houston Dynamo are maybe one of those teams that are going to slip down and be passed if anyone's going to pass them. And you look at the performance of Will Bruin in this game, and that is what is really hurting the Houston Dynamo. They need their young forward to be able to finish. He missed a few chances in this game. Columbus was able to turn it on in the second half. A bunch of young players stepping up big, including Ryan Finley, getting the game winner, his first goal of his MLS career. Big win for Brian Bliss in his debut. They get the full 3 points. They pull within 5 points of that last playoff spot.
And speaking of playoff spots, now we've seen Seattle Sounders moving right up on that Western Conference with a big win last night against Chivas USA. Thanks to Lamar Nagel's controversial goal. What was going on there?
All right, Lamar Nagel, there's hints of a handball. If you're a Chivas USA fan, you're probably saying there was a handball in there somewhere. But to Nagel's credit, he played the whistle, finished off the play very nicely, and Seattle gets a 1-0 victory. It wasn't the prettiest game of the season by any means, but if you're a Seattle fan, you're saying they were without a bunch of their big-name players, including Eddie Johnson, Clint Dempsey, of course, Brad Evans, and they still got it done. They got the 3 points. That puts them now on 43 points. They also have games in hand on Real Salt Lake and the LA Galaxy, who sit above them in the standings. If you look at Seattle, though, they have the highest points per game in MLS. So really, we should be talking about them in the Supporters' Shield race. They could, if they win their games in hand, surpass Real Salt Lake.
Well, we'll see if the Sounders can continue their streak this weekend where they host Mike Magee and the Chicago Fire at home. In an article in the Toronto Sun yesterday, it was reported that President and General Manager Kevin Payne and Toronto FC are parting ways. Toronto FC, no official comment as of yet, but the interesting thing here is that Kevin Payne is the source for this Toronto Sun article.
Yeah, it makes it a pretty strong story here. Look, there's 2 ways to look at this. From Kevin Payne's side, this is way too early to let Kevin Payne go. He's a guy who has a proven track record in MLS for building championship teams at DC United, and he was coming into a Toronto situation that was years and years in the making. To dig himself out of that hole and turn things around, he needed more time. So I'm kind of falling on that side of the fence. I don't think Kevin Payne was given enough time here. That said, the other side of the argument is that the person who made the decision is Tim Leiweke. Tim Leiweke also has a great track record of success in MLS. So when you look at that, you kind of have to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he probably knows what he's doing here. That said, I think there's probably more to come out of this story. There's got to be a reason why there was a rift between these two leading to this decision so early, less than a year into Kevin Payne's term here.
Yeah, so stay tuned to MLSsoccer.com for complete coverage of this story. Well, we are just 2 weeks away from MLSsoccer.com's 4th annual 24 Under 24 series. And Jason, to get us all excited for this, MLSsoccer.com will have a special Super Draft Reunion Google Hangout today, 4 p.m. Eastern on MLSsoccer.com. But be sure to tweet your questions at hashtag Super Draft Reunion to speak to some of the top young talent in MLS.
Yeah, #1 overall pick in the Super Draft. Andrew Farrell will be there. 2 Colorado Rapids, Dylan Powers, Deshaun Brown, and also Devin Sandoval has had himself a good season for Real Salt Lake. The other thing I'll mention here is let us know who you want to see in the 24 Under 24. Who would be your top pick? Let us know in the comments section below. Also on the site later today, I should mention we're going to have complete coverage of the U.S. and Costa Rica game from Friday night in Brazil bound. It is the first edition of our continuing coverage of the U.S. national team's journey to Brazil 2014.
Well, that's all we have for The Daily today. We'll be back tomorrow with more.